So I'm seeing more people dropping in. I think we can slowly start with the session today. Very excited, everyone, to have you here. My name is Paulina. I am the communications manager for the Unusual Pioneers. I'm going to get into what that actually is in a minute for everyone that hasn't been here before. I'm going to start now with a quick overview of what we're actually going to do today and what's going to happen next. So a quick introduction of what we're doing at Unusual Pioneers and who's joining us today. And then we're going to go right in the fireside chat with Parita from Acumen and Godwin from Unilever. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat at any time. We're going to answer them at latest at the Q&A we're going to have later. And we're trying to address them all. Sometimes we're a little bit overwhelmed, but we will try to do our best to collect them. Afterwards, we're going to jump into breakout rooms for everyone who wants to have a little bit of a networking sessions. It will be roughly 10 minutes. So if you don't want to join them, feel free to stay in the main room and grab a coffee or a tea and wait with us until we come back to the Q&A before we close the session. I welcome you all to open up your cameras so we can actually see who's joining us today. Make it an interactive session, put everything in a chat you want to get out, but please keep your microphones muted so we're not distracting anyone, and we can keep a smooth session. So I'm going to start with a quick overview of who we actually are at the Unusual Pioneers. We are a joint program with the Schwab Foundation for Entrepreneurship and Portigus and Social Business, who we're coming here from. And our mission is to support social entrepreneurs around the world who are entrepreneurial employees with a human-centric innovation mindset who try to change the world for the better with the resources and the talent that their companies have to offer. So a very valuable purpose we're trying to support. We are joined by our amazing partner organizations. Without them, we wouldn't function. And one of them is joining us today. Warm welcome to Bavidra from Acumen. He's a director of Acumen Academy. He's already helped us out doing this program with an amazing session on leadership, and I'm happy he's joining us for this talk. And of course, our amazing cohort of entrepreneurs that joined us this year. Program is still running. And one of them is Godwin, who's joining us from Unilever, where he leads amazing initiatives. And one of them is Project Shakti, which he is talking a little bit more about later. He's the external and sustainability lead at Unilever and one of our fantastic entrepreneurs. Welcome, Godwin. So I'm handing over to you, Bavidra. I'm going to make it short and sweet today because my voice is dying a little bit. And we're jumping right in the fireside chat.
Awesome. Thanks, Paulina. And thanks everyone for joining. I'm thrilled to be here and I'm really feeling Parag's energy as sporty. Let's see if we can bring some of that to the conversation. Thanks, Parag, and thanks everybody. And Godwin, so good to see you. Godwin, I was very excited to have this conversation, not just for the content of it, but because Godwin is also an Acumen Fellow. And so I had a huge amount of pride to know that he was a part of this program and really thrilled to have a chance to reconnect. So really good to see you, my man, and excited for this conversation.
Absolutely, Bavidra. Absolutely. Thank you.
So why don't we just start a little bit with, we'll get into Project Shakti specifically, but even before that, just really quickly share a little bit about your story and how did you land here and this as your way to create impact in the world as an entrepreneur?
Thanks, Bavidra. So first of all, if I can just take 30 seconds, Bavidra, to just give a shout out. The Unusual Pioneers, I think it's an incredible program that is, trying to harness the might and potential of corporates to inspire social change, in developing entrepreneurs within organizations to make impact outside of the organization. And I think I'm lucky to have been a part of that fellowship and that cohort and that training. Equally, Acumen, I think Acumen is incredibly popular across the world for the work they do through their fellowship, which I belong to, in building leaders, for impact in social innovation, and then through their academy, which is, we call the University for Social Innovation, and also through their investments. Incredible work they're doing. And so many organizations that have partnered, both Acumen and Unusual Pioneers, and then maybe honorary mention to Dalberg and Innate Motion, two organizations that I really love as well, doing lots of work, not with Unusual Pioneers yet, but hopefully they will. So how did I start? I have been asked this question before, and the last time I got asked, what I said was, I came into social entrepreneurship by accident. I joined Unilever, and Unilever is just such a fantastic organization, given the fact that during Paul Pullman's time, the former CEO, we had moved our strategy, and our strategy now encompassed social and environmental impact. So the opportunities to do this kind of work existed within Unilever because we had brands doing it, and people were trying to figure it out, and it was supposed to differentiate us and differentiate the way we do business and make impact on people. And that was the answer I gave then. But when I got back and started thinking about that answer, I noticed that some things were missing in it. And I think what was missing is the fact that I grew up, I am in a third world country, right? One time in class, I was telling someone who was talking about the statistics of poverty. I was like, look, these statistics are people that I know. You see numbers, I see names, I see faces, I see kids. So I know these people, these numbers you're throwing around. These are people I have grown with, people I have watched suffer, people I have watched die, people I have watched cry. And I think that's experience. So within Acumen Academy, we talk about human-centered design, that ethnographic immersion, so to say, having grown up with that experience had already prepped me that when the opportunity came, I was ripe to see it as an opportunity and to want to apply it. So I think between Unilever creating the platform and my experience, I think I was kind of destined to be a social entrepreneur of sorts.
That's amazing, Godwin. And I have to ask, I think the skill sets of an intrapreneur and an entrepreneur, there's certainly overlap, but there's some differences as well. But did you never consider just going straight the entrepreneurial route and creating something new for the world to tackle the same problem? Why did you choose to go from within an organization like Unilever? So
I asked a different version of this question to one of the founders of Circle of Entrepreneurs. And, he said that that's a common misconception for people who think, maybe the skill sets in entrepreneurship can be brought into entrepreneurship. It's not necessarily the case. But I doubt that you'd find an entrepreneur who hasn't thought of going out to start something new. I think that thought process would have happened at some point in time, simply by the very nature of them wanting to tinker with things and tinker with the processes and create something new and something better. But I think what happens with entrepreneurs is they ultimately come to the realization that the organization within which they sit commands a lot of resources and power, and maybe we can unpack that at some other point in the conversation. And that if they could figure out how to hack all of that power and that potential, even if they can't channel everything towards social good and social impact, perhaps they can channel a significant amount, and that would make more difference, probably more than they could make on their own. The other thing is, I think probably not necessarily a part of the thought process is, we hear this thing, they say 9 out of 10 businesses fail. And sometimes initiatives as well, right? It's pretty hard. What entrepreneurship does to you is that system is already set. A lot of the resources are there. It gives you a new problem set to navigate things around, unlocking those resources, convincing people to channel those resources in the direction you want. So that's what you need to navigate. And I think that is probably a more manageable challenge than having to completely start something from scratch. So I think between those two, you tend to find that entrepreneurs can just see the enormous potential and know that the job for them is to channel that water at the rock that they wanted to hit instead of just profits alone. That's the answer I'd give.
And I love that metaphor, being the conduit, being the channel of those resources. I would love to get in this idea of the power and the resources that sit with corporations. Within the context of acumen in our community, a tension that's really coming up is those who want to tear the system down, who just don't believe that corporate will really do anything different. Sort of straight from Audre Lorde's, the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. So the distrust of capitalism has never been higher. And then those like yourself, and frankly acumen as well, that believe that change needs to happen in the context of partnership and from within. So I guess what would you say to the skeptics that say, like, listen, man, Unilever is just selling things to people. Do you really think that a company can create social change, or are they part of the problem?
I'd say I'm disappointed that they haven't looked at the evidence, is what I'd say. So let me use Unilever, because I know Unilever. We brag sometimes, and I think even within what we brag about, there is merit in what we brag about. Today we have the Global Hand Washing Day that we all practice across the world. Yeah. That was as a result of the work of Lifebuoy, the soap, which is a product from Unilever. Today we have the work that Dove does with girls in raising self-esteem. You need to hear their stories. Even the Shakti we're going to talk about today, I think one of the stories I heard that made me know that this is absolutely a program I want to commit my heart to. We give women a basket of our goods on loan, and they trade it and then they pay off that loan after a while, and then it becomes their basket of goods, and then they continue to buy from us and trade and grow it. Now, regardless of where you are in the country, you might not know what the exchange rates are, but you will know what the differences are. In 2014, when we started the experiment, we gave women 14,500 Naira worth of a basket of goods. By 2019, one of the women, her name is Mama Farida, I saw the pictures where she started. There were holes in her walls, and she'd hang the sachet of detergent in those holes, and she'd put the things on the ground. It was really small, a really small operation. 14,500. By 2019, she was doing repeat purchases of 1 million Naira. Regardless of what the exchange rates are, you know what that difference looks like. And now multiply that by the potential across the country. We have 5,000 women now doing varying degrees of success on the program. We could really do a lot. And beyond Unilever, there are programs that have achieved so much. And so the potential is there, really. I don't think tearing down the system is the right idea, because these systems are really huge. They're really profitable. They have figured out how to exist with us and exist beyond us. I think hacking it and channeling all of that resources in the direction we want, I think that's a smarter thing to do.
That's great, Godwin. Thank you for that. And yeah, I think that you're sort of in the nuance of this, right? I think it's too easy to just point at the bad guy. But really, I think your point on evidence is really critical. And so when you think about Project Shakti, and it sounds like you've already achieved a good amount of scale, is the vision or is the future of this that it will always remain within a Unilever, or is part of the entrepreneurial journey when something hits a certain point that maybe it just needs to grow out of it? And become a separate thing entirely? Like, how do you imagine the scale and growth of this project that's clearly having a huge amount of impact?
So I think personally, when I look at the programs that we do, and we have different type of programs with different objectives, what I hope is that we plan it for the long term, and that we plan it for an exit. And the exit will differ depending on how you interpret it. Sometimes we take on programs and we approach them like marketing campaigns, and they're very short time. There's a lot of flash and bang, and it's really flashy, and then it struggles and then it dies. Yeah. So the program should be for the long term. It should be in perpetuity, which means it's a problem that it makes sense to continue to solve. The second thing is there should be an exit. So, there are different types of exits. Sometimes the exit means the problem has been completely solved. With social issues, it's not always the case. But sometimes the exit simply means we have created a system that works on its own and does not need us. And so we can use our resources somehow. With Shakti, for example, what we have done is we want these people to form the last mile of our route to market. So those rural areas we have difficulty accessing because of terrain and because it's just not economical, these women access it for us. So the idea, as long as there are rural areas, is yes, people should be our conduit to those rural areas, should be a part of our business. What I hope is we get to that point where we're not talking of Shakti as a separate project, but simply as one of our routes to market, completely integrated into our business. Probably we do not need the name Shakti anymore. These women are just our suppliers, our vendors, and we can move on to fixing another problem. So that's ultimately would probably be what I hope to see, a really full exit. Avidra?
I think Bavidra dropped out. Connection issues, that happens on Zoom. But we're gonna get back in a minute.
Sure.
In the meantime, is there anything from the audience already? Should we address any questions that popped up already?
So there is one. Anna has said, if it's a regular route to market, our experience shows it's never as profitable as the others, and therefore could be challenged. Yes, I agree that because it's small time, it will not give you the profit. But here's the sense in what we're doing. It's a third world country. We just recently, just coming out of our second recession. The pocket spend is not significant. And so we must play in the low unit pack size. And it just absolutely makes sense for us to play in the low unit pack size. We're a consumer goods company. It means that volumes is really important to us. It's something we absolutely track. Now, if we are going to expand the size of the market, those are the areas, the last frontiers that are left. The war in the in-between, in the cities and in the towns, with competition, that war is already tough enough. It's pretty much stealing share from each other. Where the rest of the new market share exists is outside of that territory, and which is why we have gone there. Now we've even seen some of our competitors, copying the same idea and going there. We knew ultimately it was going to be the case. When you look at the profits, I think you also have to look at it in context. You can't look at it in the context of the rest of the business you do with your major suppliers. What you need to do is look at it in the context of the women themselves. So for example, on the average, you find women making up to 13,000 Naira profit, which is just under $50. But you also find that their incomes is increasing nearly 400%. And that in itself is a significant story. Last year, despite COVID, we saw an 11% growth. So I think if you figure out the initiative properly, you can design something that is quite successful. But then when I think about it, it's also why I talk about the exit. I do not think that Shakti will always exist. As more and more people move out of poverty and move into the middle income class, I think we will get to the point where those women will have to transition with us to a different level, and maybe Shakti would now not be necessary again, which is what I really hope. I hope Anna that provides some context. So Bavidra, I saw you got kicked out. We're answering Anna's question, which is on the chat.
Great, thanks, and sorry about that. Apparently bad internet in Toronto. Very strange. I was gonna ask a question, and if Anna's question is answered, I was gonna ask a question. So the metaphor of channeling the water towards the rock, right, that you want to chip away at. And I do think that's the right metaphor. It is indeed a rock. It's sort of difficult and done over time. Can you speak a little bit to the challenges and the difficulty of what it means to build something like this within? You spoke about the positive side, the resources and the power. What are the hard parts of creating something like a Project Shakti from within a Unilever?
So I think when I think of that, I think I see about three challenges, but now I'll add what Anna just mentioned as a fourth challenge as well. The first is, with respect to opening doors. People do not understand this. And like Anna said, it's just not very profitable. So why are we wasting time doing stuff like this? And people already have their jobs they want to do. Don't come with this funny innovations and stuff you want to do and bother my head about it. So getting that buy-in, getting sponsors, opening doors, getting the support you need. That is a really different skill set than you probably are used to when you first get into it. So it's something you need to figure out. The budgets can also be significant because you're trying to create something entirely new. The budgets can be sizable, and the return on investment is typically not there in the beginning. Most of the return on investment is not economical; it's more social. Over time, you're able to build some return on investment, but the business might look at it and say, "This is so paltry. Why are we doing this?" So getting that budget commitment can sometimes be difficult. One challenge that I have been seeing a lot is the capacity is also sometimes missing. This is not entrepreneurship. This is not big corporate. This is somewhere in between. And that requires a different skill set. And so getting people to pay attention and build out that capacity can also be difficult. What I will add based on Anna's question is a lot of times we look at this and we think, oh, they don't typically work. And I think what I have been telling myself is, well, neither do a lot of startups.
Right.
Most of them don't work. And, the fact that they don't work doesn't mean the social problems we're trying to solve is going to go away. We are going to collectively keep chipping at it and keep trying at it. But the framework that I used to approach it now is, there's this really great article, and maybe I might post the link later, that sees social entrepreneurship as the R&D of the future. It's by this, I forget his name, but he's I think he's the lead of Dalbert Design who wrote that article for HBM. Really insightful article. If we see it as R&D, then we know that, especially if you see it like R&D in the medical sciences and in the pharmaceuticals, you're going to lose a lot of money on quite a few of them. But these are the guys who are going to invent the future for you, pretty much. You need to get to know your customers. And it's not always going to be poor people we're trying to solve. It's not always going to be the bottom of the pyramid. It's the fact that we're approaching an issue. Some issues are not necessarily faced by poor people. Gender issues are not necessarily faced by poor people. Poor people face it. But, it's the issue that counts. And Yunus has shown that, you can be profitable at the base of the pyramid, and there's lots of evidence there. But this is the R&D of the future. And if we're going to do R&D that understands the human and the social issues, we're going to know that it's not always going to be profitable. And we're going to have to accept that. But then we're going to have to figure out, we the entrepreneurs, how to make it profitable and how to work towards that as well.
That's fascinating. Please do share that article. I love that idea, and it does connect to your idea of how to use the resources of corporates to create that impact in a different way. And I hear you on the losses. Maybe one last question, and I'm looking at the time here because I know we are going to go to breakout rooms. Is there's a belief that you and I share, Godwin, which is that maybe over the past little while we've been overly focused on sort of the hero entrepreneur, the tip of the spear model. Where it's one entrepreneur that's going to go and change the world. And really, I think what it's about is a million acts of heroism rather than one hero. And somehow we still talk about the single hero, the single entrepreneur. And I think what you're trying to do is create something different. And so what does an entrepreneurial movement look like? that sort of shares almost a different model of what that impact could be, and sort of democratizing it away from the single hero entrepreneur and individuals like you in all of the corporations around the world who can possibly drive change in meaningful ways.
Thank you, Bavitra. That's a fascinating question, something I've been pondering. I have my theories. I don't think they're all fully hashed out, but I'll give them anyway.
Yeah.
When I joined Unusual Pioneers, they had asked me, what do you want to see at the end of this? And I think the answer they expected was slightly different, but I said, I wish I could create maybe 10 more people, a lot more people, social entrepreneurs like me, is really what I would like to see. It kind of caught them off guard because we're talking about Shakti, so I was supposed to be focused on Shakti. Right. But the issues we face cannot be solved by single people, regardless of how brilliant you are or how rich you are, how much resources you can command. The issues of poverty and justice can't be solved by one person or a few people. The more people we set on it, the more we can do. I don't watch a lot of movies, but if you've seen Transformers, Optimus Prime is not going to do everything. He's going to need Bumblebee, he's going to need Brown, he's going to need Cogman, or if you watch basketball, Michael Jordan cannot have pulled the team off by himself. He's going to need Pippen and Rodman and the rest of the guys. It's the same thing. The idea that there has to be this single hero who does everything, it's not going to work. So we need more people, and that's probably the job of us who are already in it. But that doesn't mean we do not need a few heroes, right? Some people are going to have to be Optimus Prime. Some people are going to have to stand there and call all the Autobots in the universe, etc. So you're going to need a few people who do the shouting and telling people, we've got a battle and rally, the troops. We're going to need all of that. In the book Rules for Revolutionaries by Becky and Zach, a bit of a controversial book, but one of the rules they give there is, you have to give away your passwords. And I found they meant it literally, but here I don't mean it literally. Please don't give anybody your passwords unless, it's in the context of building the revolution Becky and Zach were talking about. But we need to give people passwords to how to solve the social issues. One of let me not delve because we don't have a lot of time, but, we need to co-create together. We need to co-design together. We need to identify these beneficiaries and see what their pool is rather than pushing things on them that they may not want and will not succeed and will waste resources. We need to think through longevity of the programs and the exit. This is how we are going to democratize the work that we are doing and advance the progress that we want to make and bring more people into it. And it needs to stop being a competition because this rock is laughing at us if we think we're going to take it on it individually.
Thanks so much, Godwin. I have to say, I wouldn't have guessed that we'd start talking about Transformers, but I like that we did. So, Paulina, I'll pass it back to you. Does it feel like this is time to go into breakout rooms, and then we can come back for more of a Q&A? And I'm sure like Anna, there are probably more questions for you and your work, Godwin.
Thanks, Godwin. Thanks, Bavitra, for that inspiring talk. I think everyone can agree with me that that was a really, really great conversation you guys had. Yeah, now we're gonna jump into breakouts. It's gonna be roughly 10 minutes for you guys to meet and mingle. I'm gonna share this slide with us now. So I would like for you to share your name, your organization, and possibly takeaways or questions, if there are any, with each other. And then we're going to come back to the Q&A with Godwin. Please use the time and make connections. I always like people use the pool of talents and change makers we have collected here to get to know each other and maybe network a little bit. If you don't want to go into breakouts and turn your cameras on, just bear with us, get a hot beverage. We're going to be back in 10 minutes. My colleague's going to open the breakouts now. If you want to go in the breakouts, just accept the invitation and jump in the room. And if not, just decline and stay with us in the main room. And I'm gonna see you in 10 minutes. Right. So I see slowly everyone made it back in the main room. I hope I didn't interrupt you mid conversation. That usually happens with breakout rooms.
You did.
We did. Oh no.
It was just good. We just got going and then it was over.
Oh no, but feel free to exchange contacts. That's what this is for. And you can
Oh,
conversation.
thank you.
It's fantastic though. So I'm gonna get Godwin back to the stage now. I hope you gathered some questions. We're a small group today, so if you want to speak up, you don't have to put the questions in the chat. You can just speak up and we're gonna put you on the screen if you want to and answer your questions right now. So maybe in the meantime, as people are gathering up the questions they want to ask, what would you say has been the biggest challenge so far on your path as an entrepreneur at Unilever?
Yeah, I think this was similar to what we discussed earlier. I think it has to be, getting people to understand that the rules for tackling social issues are different from, the rules of tackling business. So they're completely different set of rules. You have to approach it differently. It requires a different skill set. The expectations also have to be different. The acumen, I think we talk a lot about patient capital. It's also one of the things. You do not throw money at it and expect quarterly returns per se. And you do not expect the returns in the same size. And sometimes it's difficult to articulate that. So sometimes you need sponsors. You need to work at it over time. Yeah, I think that is going to be one of the really difficult ones.
Thank you. And we have a question from Park. Am I saying that right? Probably not. I can read it, but if you want, you can also ask the question on the stage, however you prefer. But probably I'm gonna just say your name wrong, so feel free. Parag, do you want to speak up? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So I was just checking, what do you think the potential role of global philanthropic funding is in supporting social entrepreneurship? Because, and I asked this in the context of, why you talk about patient capital. Patient capital is more about, let's say, return on the impact. But is the capital patient enough to go through bureaucratic delays or hurdles, because those are two different things, right? One is you've not even started yet. So is that what patient capital should also consider, or, should it go alone?
Yeah. Parag, I think it's a really great question. And I think there's a lot of debates there with people even more qualified than myself to answer that question. But I think what I have observed and what I have seen is, I think patient capital is only one side of the issue, which is, like I said, it's an R&D and it's social issues, which is more difficult. So you need time to build out the solution. And a lot of times the impact is slower. There is also, the bureaucracy. I have a friend who has a social enterprise, and she had to turn down some funding just because she did not think her team could manage the amount of time that goes into the reports and all of that paperwork. She thought that just completely takes away from the time that her team was going to spend on the problem, and she didn't think she needed that kind of money. So I think that's also something that we have to think about. The guys at Ford Foundation, I think they really understand this, and they're putting things in place that makes it easier. And I think you begin to even see some funding right now that removes those constraints. And even as part of advertising for the funding, they tell you that this is what it means. I think talking about capital specifically is we have to understand that if we would build an organization around solving a social issue, not all the funding will directly go to solving the issue. Some of the funding will be required to sustain the organization. And so some funding has to be, we need to learn to put funding aside to help organizations sustain so that they can focus on fixing the problem. So I think there are several other things I could state here, but I think you're spot on around the role that global funding can play in supporting organizations to fix social issues. A lot of times, more than just funding, what you actually need is expertise. And so if we quantify that expertise, I tend to quantify things in financial terms a lot. It's significant, and so helping people attract partners is such a great contribution to a social innovation. And Unusual Pioneers and Acumen are really great at this. They have these partners that are just absolutely incredible that they can always point you to, that can help you with the work that you do. So it's a lot of things that have to come in to help organizations scale out their programs.
Thank you, Godwin. Anyone else that wants to jump in and ask the question, now is your chance.
I have a question, Godwin. Thank you so much for your thoughts and your time today. You talked a little bit about, how being an entrepreneur in Unilever can sometimes be difficult because the people you're speaking with are corporates and don't necessarily understand the language and the world of social entrepreneurship, as well as the social entrepreneurs themselves. I'm curious if, and that for me speaks to, what are some of the values and some of what should be measured, when we look at like economic returns and value that enterprises bring to the world. And I'm curious if you can share a little bit about, in your experience working within Unilever, what are some of the bright spots that you've observed? What works in highlighting this shift, and what gets measured? What is most valued? And how can we continue to support those bright spots?
Katie, I think that is an incredible question. So first, let me start by saying Unilever is one of the early experimenters, one of the early pioneers with social impact from within a large corporate, sustainability, et cetera. So we've actually got 10 years of experimenting with this and being the public voice and talking about it. And if I say we still have some challenge, then imagine organizations that are still at the beginning of their journey. So it can be really difficult for some social entrepreneurs. One of the luck, and I'm going to come to your question around what we value, but one of the luck that we have is social impact and environmental impact and sustainability is being preached from the top down. And as soon as it is preached from the top down, it makes things easier than if you had to preach it up. When you have to preach it up, it's a completely different ballgame. Now, I was saying to someone on a different call, and I said, if I had anything to tell a CEO who was skeptical, I'd say, why don't you throw out a challenge, find an issue that is close to your heart, really big, and throw the challenge to your employees and see what comes of it. Employees, every day they see these issues, and I think they will take on the challenge and they will try to figure it out. In the beginning, they probably might not be successful because, like I said, it's a lot of experimentation, but they will build a capacity and they will build a taste for it. If I was saying to someone who was an entrepreneur, I'd say take them to meet the people and let them hear the stories of the work that you do from the people experiencing it. The story I told you about the other lady, Mama Farida, the day I heard her story, it completely melted my heart. And every time I say the story within the business, someone looks at me suspiciously thinking, is he telling the truth? That is the kind of impact that it has, and she exists. I have the pictures, and if you are willing to travel, I'll take you to her, so you have to let them say it. But again, measuring what you do, telling the truth about what you do, where the shortcomings are, what your journey is, where you are, at what stage in your journey, and putting it externally what I saw happen within Unilever when we started doing that. So since joining the team, I helped publish 2 sustainability reports, and suddenly it's become a top burner conversation with my leadership team. Every time it comes up, they reference back the sustainability reports that we have published, what we have said, where we had fallen short, and the questions they're getting from the public. And now they want us to address it and to fix it. And then that pull suddenly happens. So instead of me pushing what we need to do, suddenly the pull begins to happen, and then the resources follow it, and the appetite follows it. And you begin to see all the walls giving way.
Parag, you can again turn your mic on if you want to and jump in the conversation.
So I think I see a very interesting question around VR. So I think before the mic is turned on, I should quickly confess, I have no idea how to use this. It's not my area of expertise at all, Parag. So someone better qualified than me is going to have to answer that question.
No, but I just found your comment very interesting. Thank you for sharing this. That you said your lived experience
Yes.
really prepared you for a role in this in social enterprise, and I really empathize with that, right? Because sometimes we are living in this bubble. We want to help, and even within India, there's so many different levels of income and lived experience that unless you move beyond a statistic, you're not really compelled to act in perhaps meaningful ways beyond maybe just donating some money. So I don't know. I mean, with all this talk about the metaverse and virtual reality and all of this becoming more important today, like, a lot of young folks think about the future generation. They're living most, at least half of their lives, I could argue, in a digital domain. Currently it's on their smartphones. Tomorrow it's going to be something else. And if you want to bring more people together, like again, that second point you made around, nobody can do this alone. You have to bring people together on the journey. Perhaps, if not you, someone else has any thoughts on this, on virtual reality as an idea of, just making sure that lived experience is more widely shared, broadly shared.
I can maybe share, because we actually used virtual reality to share.
Okay.
So I'm Anna from Danone Communities, and we did some virtual renown movies about following one of the beneficiaries, which is a van puller in Bangladesh, carrying a thing. And it's really breathtaking. The only thing is, for now, the technology, it's more of a one-to-one system to view the things, but hopefully in the future you can use it at a larger scale.
Thank you for sharing, Anna. That'll be interesting. I would love to perhaps read more about that.
You need to watch.
I will watch. Yeah, if I can find it, if you don't mind sharing.
We can share.
Yeah, thanks.
So I think that's one of the beautiful things of building communities. Someone like Anna can jump in and save me when I get a question, puts my head on that one. So thanks, Anna. I think, Anna, I just shared a link. Traditionally, I just, shoot a movie. Luckily, and I think I see a question related to that now. So, we tell our stories as much as possible. And BBC Works came and did some shoots with one of the women to tell her story, as well as a woman from one of the programs in the States for a different brand. And so I've shared it there. And, we, oh, sorry, I think I sent it to Paulina directly. We use these to tell our stories. I think VR might probably be a little bit more immersive, but it's not something I have experience with. I mean, I hope to. And when that time comes, I think it's also what we'll talk about with partnerships. We will ask people who have the expertise, who know what the issues are, including the ethical issues that Parag mentioned, to come in and help us with this. And then that will be our journey in that direction. But for now, the most that we'll do will be our reports, our videos, our talks, and our social media campaigns. And then sitting and having these conversations with people.
Thank you. And if there are no more questions coming in right now, I would say we're gonna slowly close the session for today, at least in Europe, West Africa, it's a Friday afternoon. I don't want to keep you any longer, but I'm very happy to have you all here in this community. You can see people jumping in and answering questions. It's fantastic. Yes, so thank you all for bearing with us and taking part in this unusual talk. I'm going to share my screen. Someone jumping in. I'm going to share my screen with you one last time to say thank you and goodbye, and share some more upcoming news with you. So tune in also for our unusual talk series that we have now on podcast. So if you missed some of the previous talks, you can find us now on Spotify. This talk will also be soon to listen to for your unusual ideas on the go if you don't have time to make it to our live events. But obviously it's nice if you have the chance to ask your questions actually to the person. So we're always happy to help you. And then I want to say thank you and goodbye. And if you're interested in our program, applications are open now. You find more information on unusualpioneers.com. So maybe you'll be part of our next year's cohort, or you know someone you think is an entrepreneur and needs the support, contact us. And with that, goodbye. Enjoy your weekend, everyone. Thanks for staying with us.
Thank you for.
And thank you, of course, to our fantastic speakers.
Thanks, God.